Well, good morning, everyone. This is Maurice Matsamori from Howland Associates, and welcome to our video cast. Today, we're in the process of talking about what the current events are given the COVID-19. And today, we have our founding partner of Howland Associates, David Howe, as well as Michael Murphy of K&L Gates. And if any of you know Michael, you know he is quite a character. What an awesome guy! And we're going to be talking a lot about some of those current events, and I'll most likely be a silent party because I love hearing these two go at it. And without further ado, we're gonna turn the time over to them. So, Michael, welcome. Thanks for joining us. We're looking forward to this. And Dave, I know you two have been talking a little bit, so I'm going to let you folks take it away right here, right now.
That sounds good. Thank you. Appreciate it, Maurice. Michael, it's always a pleasure. Love catching up with you. I'm sure we would have saw each other on the road if it wasn't for kind of this lockdown for the last couple months.
Yep. Thank you guys for having me.
That sounds great. So you want to do a little intro on just a quick background on you real quick, and then we'll dive in?
Sure. Michael Murphy. I am an attorney. I'm glad there's no sound from an audience here because that's usually where I get the booze. But I am a partner at the law firm of K&L Gates, and I have kind of a niche, unique practice where, you know, my background legally is an antitrust competition attorney, and I've really fell into exclusively working with product manufacturers on the design and implementation of distribution strategies, pricing policies, authorization programs, all really building out that legal foundation to be able to combat that online price erosion, remove those internet, unauthorized resellers that cause so many headaches for manufacturers out there. And we do it just not only in the US, we do it in Europe, we do it in Asia, and we really roll out these programs globally.
Oh, that's great. I appreciate it, Michael. And I always like to say, because a lot of when people hear what I do, I always say that the Michaels of the world keep me out of hot water. So where I come in and I help with a lot of those strategies, I outline a lot of, what you should have in a policy, those types of things. Where I can give some guidance, you need to have that legal counsel. You have to have legal counsel go through, regardless on if I've helped or looked at or read or gave advice on, let's not say advice, right? I gave opinions on, 1,000 MAP policies or reseller agreements. You really have to have legal go through it. You got to make sure it fits your business model. And just because I might come along and say, hey, you need to make sure you should have territories, digital territories, you should have these things in there. You need to make sure you got the legal minds behind that to make sure that everything's protected.
Yeah, no, and you're right, David. I mean, that's one of the interesting things. Like most brands that I work with, they don't even think of a lot of these things as legal issues to begin with. But as you know, especially in the pricing policy world, whenever you're dealing with price, there's an inherent risk. And, no joke if you do it wrong. I mean, it's the Sherman Act's the relevant statute in the United States. And I mean, it's penalties up to $100 million for corporations. Individuals can be fined. So, look, I'm not in the business of scaring people, but at the same time, if you do pricing wrong, you can get hit with a hammer and it can be really serious business. So, but with all that said, there's a very legally safe ways to do this stuff and be very effective to clean up the marketplace.
I agree. And I think that's where, when you talk about price, and this leads right into our conversation today, you talk about price, you really start looking at those open marketplaces, right? Now we're talking about the Amazon of the world. And then you start saying words that really make lawyers a bit skittish when we need to control our pricing, right? We need to remove sellers. These are words that kind of put a lot of lawyers on a little, well, let's back up. We're not controlling the price, right? We're stabilizing what the price should be or things of that nature. And that's really where it comes in. And this is where you and I can really kind of dive in today. What I do from my background, 20 years in brand protection, and brand protection is a whole other podcast on defining that evolution over the last 20 years. But it really comes down to protecting that brand. So what we like to say is you need to have these policies, agreements. You need to make sure warranties are tight, your enforcement documents, your enforcement strategies, these things are laid out there. And in any brand protection or channel compliance strategy, I always say you have to have those three pillars, right? I've been saying this for 20 years. You got to be able to monitor and see what the marketplace is doing, research and investigation, then come with a good enforcement strategy. There's a good friend of mine, and I know you know her very well, Denise out there, that always says, she's pretty aggressive when she says it's better to have no policy than to have a policy and not enforce it, right? And this is pretty common. So yeah. What we like to do is going out there and looking at these marketplaces, seeing what the trends are, and then making sure that we have a clean channel. So the best benefit for the manufacturer to stabilize the pricing, and then also to have the highest level of consumer confidence into the product, so you don't get any of that erosion, whether it's price erosion or consumer confidence erosion.
Absolutely. Look, and I agree 100%. And, I think that's the key. A lot of people want to jump to the enforcement without building out that proper foundation first. And I always refer to clients like the foundation of a house or tools in a tool belt.
Yeah.
And the more you build into that foundation, right, it gives you the ability later on, even problems you might not even think you're ever going to have. If you build out that foundation properly, you're going to have more tools in the toolbox to deal with the issues you're facing today, but also deal with the issues that you may face 6, 12, 18 months from now. And look, one of the greatest, things about what we do, or at least what I enjoy the most, is the internet's always moving, right?
Yeah.
COVID-19 is a prime example of what Amazon was doing 2 weeks ago. They're not doing today, and they're not going to be doing 3 weeks from now. So it's always evolving. It's always changing. It's always fun to see, how far you can push the law on different things, what creative claims you can come up with to remove unauthorized resellers, and how you can do different things. And, not only in the US, because things are pretty mature in the US, but that's what's really fun about Asia. Like antitrust law in China and Hong Kong are like 8 and 12 years old respectively. So, there's a lot of gray area there that we can fool around with and push the limits on, and actually not only just interpret and apply it, but actually influence the law in those regions of the world, which has been really fun.
No, and I've seen you be pretty crafty on that. So let's shift a little bit, because I think I don't want to focus too much and talk too much about the COVID and everything, but we have to talk about how that has changed, not only today, but what we need to look at 6, 12, 18 months, right? Our manufacturers, and same with you, we have a lot of overlapping clients, Mike, and we're sitting here getting these questions. What's going on with Amazon? Can I get my product into Amazon? Should I embrace other, e-commerce platforms? Should I boost up my direct commerce? We're getting a lot of these questions. And I thought it'd be really interesting. And, Maurice was great to kind of forethink about putting this together with you and I, waking up nice and early in the morning, right? But I would love to get your take on what you see today with Amazon specifically, and we'll expand that out to other marketplaces. But what you say in Amazon today, and the questions you're getting, and maybe some of that advice, and it's all educated decisions based on our experience, but what advice you're maybe giving a few of your manufacturers that are just questioning what's going on.
Yeah. And taking COVID-19, like if you step back, right, I love looking at things at short-term and long-term, as you said, and I think that's a great way to look at them. Look, in the short term, for a lot of our clients and a lot of product manufacturers, e-commerce right now is your only sales channel.
Yeah.
Right? Even traditional like brick and mortar, like I've been getting calls from like HVAC companies and sump pumps and, companies who a year ago would say, hey, look, only 5% of my sales are online. I'm not that worried about it. Now, look, to me, that 5% of your sales is still, detrimental to the 95% of your sales in brick and mortar. But now they're saying, hey, look, e-commerce is being thrusted upon us because it's the only way we can sell products. So we need a plan. We need a strategy. I think for the long term, you're seeing a lot of new e-commerce customers, right? The example I give are examples I know. My mom, right? My mom never bought stuff online. And now because she has no choice, she's buying things online. She's calling me, yelling at me, saying, why didn't you tell me about this earlier? It's so easy. It's like, well, I've been telling you about this for 10 years, but that's a whole other conversation, right? But, they're going to stick. So the long term is this is really expediting e-commerce growth. Mm-hmm. A lot of new customers are going to use it, maybe not for everything, but certain things, or even e-commerce people or e-commerce customers are using it for different categories. Right? Like I was never a big fan of grocery shopping online, right? I wanted to touch my fruit, right? Or look at my meat before I bought it. But, when you have no choice, you start doing it. And honestly, the stuff they send me is better than the stuff I pick out. So it's been out pretty well. It's been opening my eyes to that. So, it's interesting, right? Because right now, more consumers are online than probably have ever been. Mm-hmm. But the downside of that is a little bit, people are also a little more cautious about their spending, right? People are getting furloughed, people are getting laid off, people are getting pay cuts. So, I think when COVID-19 broke, there was really a huge focus on these essentials, and we can get into that and how Amazon responded and such. But there was a focus on the essential items, right? The groceries, the masks, all of that stuff. You know, and who knows what essential means and how Amazon
Yeah.
others, which we can talk about. But, you know, I haven't seen, you know, the April data yet, but March, it was all essentials. And I haven't seen a lot of April e-commerce data, but my prediction a few weeks ago was hopefully once people start getting the essentials under control, they're going to see how much money's left in their pockets. And hopefully now they're going to start moving back into those non-essentials or, you know, those want items, those things that people like to buy because they make them feel good, which would be good for a lot of our clients as well. But, you know, it's really been across the spectrum. You know, some of my clients are the essentials, right? And they're killing it right now. Like killing it to a sense, I was telling Maurice the other day, like where they're calling and saying, hey, how much can I legally charge for this product and not get in trouble under price gouging laws, right? Or what we've actually seen, and that's probably an exaggeration, but what we've actually seen is manufacturers, and one just filed a lawsuit, which is interesting, but 3M, right, makes masks. One of their resellers was price gouging and charging a ridiculous amount of money. So what did they do? They sued them, right? They went on the offensive, sued their own reseller for trademark infringement. And I read this morning, just obtained an injunction from the court, right, to stop one of their resellers from price gouging. So, you know, it's an interesting dynamic. You know, I think there's a PR play to it, right? You don't want to be a gouger in times of need or emergencies, you know, but it also, it harms your brand out there, right? And you have legal rights to protect it. You know, that's one end of the spectrum. The other end of the spectrum are the guys maybe in consumer electronics and apparel and sporting goods, and just stuff's not selling.
Yeah.
Or stuff is selling, but you can't even get it into a fulfillment center. How do you get it there? And that's the other question. And look, as good as Amazon is, right, they're struggling with this too, right? And to me, what we've seen is it's that last mile of delivery, right? And that's why they've done those things where they limit what comes into the FBA warehouses. And they're just having trouble. And you know, David, you touched on it. I think you've seen it more from the brand side. I mean, I've seen it from the consumer side where consumers are starting to move away from Amazon, right? Because they get what they want when they want it. So they're going to the Walmarts, the eBays, direct to, you know, manufacturers' websites, you know, to give them a chance, which is opening a door and an opportunity, you know, for those guys. You know, most of my brands have kind of been sticking with Amazon, knowing that this will come back around, but I'd be interested. I think, you know, you have some manufacturers who have been moving to some of the other marketplaces.
No, that's a good point, Mike. And what I've seen, oh, there's a little feedback there. What I've seen is Amazon and all the greats, you always say that, you know, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely, right? And everything you love about Amazon from a consumer perspective, right? You know, quick product, good reviews, good price, things of that. You get it within a day, 2 days. That actually has worked against them when this happened, because they tried to do, whether we want to say they did the right thing, but they did what they thought they needed to do by having that essential, which Amazon over 3 to 5 years, and I touched on this before the call, has created a human habit, right? Where everybody just immediately jumps right to this device when they're looking for any product, whether they're on their couch, in their car, in the store, in the park. They think of something, they go right to their phone. They don't open up Google, they don't open up Walmart, they open up Amazon app. And that's where the research and everything. Well, when all this happened, Amazon came up and just had a big alert saying, we're not shipping anything to your location that's not deemed essential until April 24th. And this is back in March. Now, I understand what they're trying to do, but when you create a human habit to do that, and then that's broken, people are going to still get, there's a habit there that's going to be fulfilled. And that's where they're going to the Walmarts of the world, to eBay, back to eBay. Remember, people don't realize this, but back in the 90s, eBay held 90% of it, right? You know, they have the ability. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, eBay's where I started, right? I mean, when I started this, there was no Amazon, right? I mean, It was all eBay, and it was a bunch of guys in New York or LA mainly getting their hands on consumer electronics, selling on eBay, and created a whole bunch of disruption. I mean, wish I could say I had that, you know, glass ball, and I knew this was going to be the practice. And when I went to law school, this is what I wanted to do. But, you know, I had a consumer electronics brand who had an eBay issue, and that's how I fell into it. And I said, oh, geez, they're not the only ones.
Yeah.
I agree. And they've changed even, I always like to say that I talk out of both sides of my mouth sometimes, right? I love Amazon as a consumer over here, and it creates a job. But the other side, Amazon kills my manufacturers and it's just a big pain in the butt. But what's really happened is even during all of this, on lockdown, and here in the Boise, Idaho market, we're on lockdown as well. I went online to start buying stuff, right? I didn't go so far to grab groceries and things of that nature because we weren't totally locked down like, places like New York or California, but some of the just random stuff that we want to grab, and I couldn't even get that. But yet I'd go over to a Walmart, go over to eBay, and I'm getting this product in 2 or 3 days. Now, did that habit break in me? Did it break with a lot of other consumers? We don't know. Time will tell, like you say, when we see the data. But what I can say, and this is the question you posed to me, the brands and manufacturers I work with, I started getting calls right away. I can't get product into Amazon. Amazon's not taking my FBA. We're thinking about firing up our eBay store that we used to. We're going to push our direct commerce. We want to dump a lot of ads in that. Now we're starting to see manufacturers say, I'm not going to focus on Amazon totally. Right? Maybe before it was 80-20 e-commerce, where Amazon was 80%, they did 20% elsewhere. Now maybe that's going to shift where it's more 60-40, right? Or 50-50. It's never going to go away. Amazon's still the beast and they can come back. But I think it's good for them to think about those things. And we got other marketplaces, like, Target's launching their whole marketplace. Groupon went away just over the last 6 months. Groupon went away from the daily kind of deals to a real traditional marketplace that they have now. So we're seeing these pop back up, and there's room for them because of the fulfillment that a Target, that a Walmart, things like that actually can facilitate that, where in the past, Amazon was really doing that.
Yeah, and I think Target's a prime example, right? And I guess I should watch how I say prime in these conversations. Target's a great example of, I think in March, their e-commerce business was up like 40%, right? Yeah. Which I would have never really predicted. Best Buy was up, 100% on e-commerce business. And, Walmart grocery is just through the roof right now. But you're exactly right. I mean, it creates opportunity. I think it was Google Shopping that started offering free advertising for brands, right? To get people moving over there and trying it out, which I think is a brilliant idea, on their end to move people away. So it's interesting. But even on Amazon, I've also seen a bit of a shift. And I think there's been a slower shift and a gradual shift anyway, but a lot of brands trying to move away from 1P and move more towards 3P, right? Now it's kind of necessity. If Amazon's not accepting your products into their warehouse, the only way you have to sell them is to either, go 3P direct to consumer yourself, or work with a partner or one of your dealers who's a 3P on Amazon who can actually handle that fulfillment side. So, a lot of different dynamics being played out.
I agree. And I've been pretty adamant across the board that any manufacturer that comes to me, I always recommend don't go 1P, go 3P anyways. Keep control of your brand as much as possible. Now, a lot of manufacturers, a lot of brands don't have the know-how internally to do true Amazon, 3P. And that's where, an authorized third-party seller comes into play. They can manage all the content, the ads, those things. We don't need to dive into that today, but it just makes sense for them to say, okay, what's the world going to look like? And this is where we try to predict what's going to go out there. And if we take things on skin value on what everybody says, right? You can't trust the media, nobody knows what's really going on. But if there is, we get back to a little level of normalcy during this summer, but then there is a resurgence or something happens there and we go through this one more time, or if we don't go through it again, you already know the amount of consumers now are pulling way back, right? I think that this is going to change the entire dynamic, how we do everything. Stores now, I'm assuming it's the same way on the East Coast for you, but even in Boise where we did not get hit that hard, right? Thank God we didn't get hard, but all of our stores now, you can only walk in certain directions. They're only keeping the stores at 40 to 50% capacity. A lot of places around here aren't even transacting in cash. They don't want to have that interaction. So like you said, like your grandmother and how you're buying groceries, I'm seeing more and more of that last holdout. I talked about this a year ago, that the last holdouts of e-commerce were the Sears and the Kmart's closing down in rural America. I'm like, okay, those people are still going to buy, but they're going to be forced because those were the last holdouts, right? In the little Iowa where there was a Sears. Well, I can eat those words now and say, okay, that was a trend, this is probably the more catalyst to that, to get that last holdout to say, maybe it makes sense. And not only that, if you think about it, Mike, these were sent to grandparents all over the country in mass quantities because of FaceTiming, social distancing, talking with grandchildren. I have many family members that are doing book nights on FaceTime. Well, now they're embracing technology. And if you can do if your grandma who's 60, 70, 80 years old is FaceTiming, they can go buy, So I think you're right. I think that's where the trends, and they're going to need to embrace that, not just a consumer, but where Amazon's mastered this as a tool for omni-channel purchasing. Now the Targets and the Groupons and Google Shopping and things of that nature are going to need to do the same thing to get the information in the hands of the consumer to be able to have an educated purchase.
Yeah, no, look, you're exactly right. I'm actually working on a client alert now, which probably will be out at the end of the week. And I'm titling it COVID-19 Killed the Department Store, right? Because it just escalated. All those guys, the JCPenney's, the Sears, right? The Neiman Marcus's, the ones who just have been slow adopters and haven't really addressed e-commerce. It's just all escalated on them. And now they're either filing for bankruptcy or on the verge of filing for bankruptcy. Right? Because that foot traffic's gone and their balance sheets were awful to begin with. And they're in a really, really bad spot, one thing I've been asked about by some of my clients that sell to those stores, what can we do? Right? And that's the other question, because what happens if they go into bankruptcy, you start seeing liquidation sales, start seeing deep discounts. So not only from a brand perception issue, but as you guys know as well, if not better than me, the sophistication of the 3Ps out there. They're all over those sales. They're not selling it to the grandma down the street. They're selling 100 of them to some guy who's going to be smart, hold them for a while, and then he or she's going to list them on Amazon 3P when that liquidation sale's over and front the brand for another 6 months. So we're talking with brands through strategies on, buying habits and changing those buying habits with those at-risk retailers. Or, hey, what can we do when they actually go into bankruptcy? Can we negotiate with the trustee? Can we get our products back? And there's a lot of avenues that we've done successfully in the past, but, it's a real issue.
Yeah. I think they're going to need to, and this is part of one of the things Maurice wanted to put together today, knowing where we are today and where things are going to start transitioning to. It's so important to have a good, clear, I'm ex-military, Michael, this, right? So everything with me is strategy. So you can't, what I always quote, Maurice always quote The Art of War, right? Where it's a true statement that every battle is lost or won before the first shot's fired, right? And it's because you don't understand the entire marketplace. So knowing where we are today, making some educated assumptions on what's going to happen tomorrow, and then that 6, 12, and 18, we need to prepare for that now. There's tools and things that we can put in place. This is not overly complicated. You got to have the right people to do it, but making sure, like we talked about, that foundation is critical, right? Making sure you got a good monitoring service, making sure that you've got a good investigation, research. You got to know who these people are. How did they acquire the product, right? How are they offering the product? Are they shipping it in FBA? How are they doing these things? And then a clear enforcement strategy. Because nothing upsets me more. Okay, there's one thing that upsets me more. When I see a MAP policy that people sign, that's still, in today's world, that still upsets me. But having a one-size-fits-all enforcement where they have one letter that they send out across the board to everybody. And you can't have that because you don't know, were they authorized, were they not authorized? Do you have an authorized resale program? If they were authorized at one time and they bought a lot of product and now you're trying to shut them down right now because you made them not authorized, that's kind of bad faith because they're sitting on a lot of product they bought. There's got to be some give and take. You got to make sure that you go good faith and go about it right and then go hard. Maurice and I have a really, I'd like to say we're really good, but we've been doing great stuff for our clients that within a 60-day period, we can clean up 85%. He hates when I say numbers, but at least 85% of that channel. And it's because a lot of these people don't know. You tell them, you give them alert, and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, I wasn't sure, or can I become authorized? Or it's just putting people on notice, right? And when I say numbers like that, 85, just so everybody doesn't beat me up on LinkedIn and trying to right there going, clean up 85%. 85% sometimes is only 15% of your problem because that last 15%, they're the professional sellers. They're 85% of your channel diversion. But regardless of the numbers, having that clear strategy tied with knowing what the whole battlefield looks like, you will be successful no matter what happens in 6, 12, or 18 months. You put the right people in the right place and you're going to be successful.
Yeah, look, that's right. It's getting that control, right? And honestly, now's really the time for a lot of manufacturers to do it. And I've been, my business has been up, right? Because people are reaching out saying, like, I really need to start embracing this e-commerce, right? Because even if it was only 10 or 15% of my business, and right now it might be 80%, but in the future, it's probably going to be 20 to 25%, right? I mean, there's going to be growth. It's escalating that growth. And you're exactly right. And look, I'll support your numbers because I've seen it across all the clients I've worked with over the years. When you properly set up that legal foundation, like it's amazing. By sending simple cease and desist type letters, you can get rid of about 85% of the problem. Now, you're right. A lot of it's low hanging fruit, right? But the key to this whole game is being able to remove these guys as cheaply, as efficiently as possible, right? Because then that remaining 15%, that's where we can dig down, right, David? That's where you come in with the investigations and can really figure out who they are, where they're getting the products from, and shutting down those channels. And then when you shut down that guy, you also shut down that leak, right? And I work with brands. The first thing I do is, I call it channel mapping, right? But I try to figure out their go-to-market strategy. I try to figure out every channel they have and how they get to market. And now that I work in so many verticals, usually when I work with a brand, I have a good sense of how that vertical works for the most part. But no matter how much diligence you do up front, there's always going to be leaks that no one even knows about. But it's amazing through the enforcement process how much you learn. I'll give you an example, right? One very large company that has a lot of divisions, right? We caught somebody getting one product from one division, and the guy said, oh, I get it from the other division. So I go back to my contact and say, oh, they get it from your other division. Impossible. Michael, that's impossible. He's lying. Ask for proof. That's impossible. Go back, ask for proof, have an invoice with the other division with their products on it. Complete failure of the system, right? Not knowing what the left hand was doing. Basically, anyone within that umbrella, that company can order from any division, and it was creating leaks everywhere. And by the way, there was no control over pricing, so they could sell it for whatever they wanted to whoever they wanted. And just cleaning that up, right? That floor up so much, and then layering on, the traditional stuff of the authorization program, the pricing policy. You're exactly right. The monitoring and enforcement is key. Right. I say, because I don't know, maybe I'm from Philadelphia, but what you going to do with it? Right. Like I can give you the best documents in the world, but if you're not going to enforce them,
exactly.
if you're not going to do anything, it's probably going to be a little better than it was, but you're never going to reach your goals of those sustainable dealer margins that, you're really looking for, and those predictable dealer margins that you're looking for, in the marketplace. So it's really that alignment, that buy-in from the bottom to the top to the bottom of the company, where you really want it to become, part of your culture, right? Because once it becomes part of your culture, that's when it really starts clicking, when the customer service people understand, maybe not all the details, but they understand there's a pricing policy, and they understand if there's a question about it, there's a dedicated email address that they should send that person to, or what have you.
Yeah.
Things start working, because there's nothing worse than I send a letter to an unauthorized 3P and then call their distributor, and their distributor says, I don't know what they're talking about. They don't have any program, right? And they get a different answer from them. Then they call customer service of the company and they say, well, I'm not really sure. And there's all these different answers. Well, that just emboldens 3Ps to keep doing what they're doing.
Yes.
But you have that program and everyone understands it in their role within it, and they call the distributor and they say, oh yeah, you better reply. Here's the link, or here's the application. They call the manufacturer, they get the same message. They call me, they get the same message. People start saying, oh geez, look, there really is a program, right? And that's just alignment, right? That's not the law, right? That's just building a program, getting everyone on the same page and standing behind.
I would have to say that a number of the problems that I see, especially in enforcement, is that, to your point, it's a simple organizational development matter. It drives me nuts, because before I was in this business, that's what I did, is organizational development. And I can't tell you how many times I've seen that people are selling even within the corporation, and all of a sudden it blindsides. Oh, I didn't know I could do that. It's a crazy, what you even call it, spectrum. If that's the word. Yeah.
Look, I've even seen, and I guess it's a credit to me, but it frustrates the hell out of me, where clients will make a bad sale, right? Oh, and first off, they got to understand there's good sales and bad sales. And then, I'll figure it out and I'll trace it back and I say, hey, did you sell to, X distributor that we cut 6 months ago? Yeah, Michael, it's been a bad quarter. We need to do it because you're so good at cleaning it up. I know it'll like 30 days of pain, but you'll clean it up. And it's like, look, that's not the mentality that's going to make you successful for the long term.
Exactly.
The mentality that's going to make you successful for the long term is really sticking with the program, putting your money where your mouth is and staying strong. And honestly, when you do that, and this is the beautiful thing that I think some people are afraid of, but when you do that, not only do you see increased margins, you also see increased sales. And that's really, it doesn't get better.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that because that's key, right? We're going to restrict sales, but we're going to grow overall sales, right? So you're restricting the sellers by nature and then growing the sales, and you're stabilizing that price back up to where the price point. So it's a win-win. But, to kind of summarize, because I know we're coming up on the top of the hour here, the thing that I really, you and I talk a lot about investigation, enforcement, tracking it back. Maurice and I see this all the time, and we have these hard conversations. And one of the things that cracks me up, and you touched on it a second ago, and I'd like to hear if you got a little anecdotal story around that, but we hear this where, Dave, we knew you'd probably nail one of these guys, but we can't shut him off. He just moves too much product. Or we can't go, we know that distributor's doing it. And Maurice and I was on 2 calls last week with the distributors. Well, we know the distributor's doing this, but we can't strong arm them. They just move too much product.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, if you can't, because I give a very strong commitment, Mike, that I will clean up your channel and I'll show you all your problems, but you're going to have to make the hard decisions, because when we get down to that last 10, 20%, there's hard decisions. They're going to hurt and they're going to sting, right? And it'd be interesting to hear you say, like, how do you overcome sometimes when you say, hey, I can't shut this one off, or I can't go and have them sign something, or it was a handshake from the founder. You always hear this. And it's like, but if we don't deal with it, your problem. I don't mind staying on payroll for the next 2 years while we clean up what these guys are doing, but you're not going to be happy.
Yeah. So look, it's a tough issue, and I'll tell you, and maybe time has beaten me up a little bit, but 15 years ago when I started this, if a client wasn't willing to make those decisions, I would tell them to find somebody else to work with.
Yeah. Yep.
It just frustrated me. Listen, is this business good for me and my family? Yeah, obviously. But you guys know, like, I'm extremely passionate about this. And what I like more than even money is winning.
That's right.
Helping brands. And that's why I love what I do. And that's why I can do this around the clock. I've seen my family more during this quarantine than I probably have since my kids were born, right? Because I'm on the road, I'm working, and I love the hustle, right? And look, I'm learning lessons from this too. I actually learned that I actually can work from home a little bit. Maybe right? But what I've learned in those situations is some clients need to take baby steps, right? If I cut and run on them, they're never going to get there. So it's starting to work on the baby steps. And, like clients who have, I have 50 distributors. You don't need 50 distributors. Now, are they going to get down to like 5 right away? No. But if this year I can get them down to 35 and then get them down to 30, right? And then get them down to 25, we're making progress. Yes. And I know we're going to see incremental changes and improvement in the marketplace. It's the same with internet resellers, right? Some people still have that mindset of the more dealers I have are going to equate to more sales.
Yeah.
But that doesn't work like that. It's like vertical. It's not horizontal, right? It doesn't matter if you have 100 people selling on Amazon or 2 people selling on Amazon, right? A consumer is going to be able to find your products and purchase them. But it takes time, right? Keep in mind, you have some sales execs who've made a lot of money a long time doing business their way, right? Now they have 3 or 4 years left to retirement, and you're trying to change the way they go to business, and they don't want to, they don't even want to risk the money they've been making, so they want to stick to it. So sometimes, you have to take those baby steps. And, even with the partner, you say, hey, we don't want to cut them off. Okay, well, let's cut them off or not supply them our new products coming in, right? Or let's start shifting them more to end of life, or let's limit what we're selling them, right? There's all different things you can do. And then when you start doing those steps and then they realize, oh my goodness, our sales are actually the same or up, we're just moving who the winners and losers are.
Yeah.
Right? They start getting more comfortable to make some of those tougher decisions.
No, I agree. So here to kind of close this out, because content everybody's time, because you're right. One thing I've noticed with this whole COVID and lock-in, and I've worked from home for years, right? All my clients now are working from home, and now all this is a huge priority. So Maurice and I have been working our butt off for the last 6 weeks, because all of a sudden, where they would communicate with us 3 or 4 times a week, now it's 3 or 4 times a day. Hey, Dave, this is this. So it's so I want to be cognizant of everybody's time. One thing we'll do after this, I know Maurice, we're gonna publish this a few different places. Yeah. We'll put your contact information, there, right, with everything there, Michael, because we do appreciate it. If there's one note that you want to leave everybody with today, and one question maybe you want to pose them that they need to answer themselves, so that we could help answer, what would that be?
Well, look, I think the note is, depending, or really not depending, but what's your e-commerce strategy? And you really need to think about it. Do you have one, right? Because people are going to be across the spectrum on this. Some are going to really have no strategy at all. And some are a strategy, but do they have a plan, right? And do they have a legal foundation? And to me, I think this is an opportune time, one, because some companies have some dead time, right? Because the sales aren't there, there's supply issues, right? To really dig into that and think about, hey, what's your short-term, but really more importantly than the short-term, what's your long-term plan for embracing e-commerce and growth? And what guardrails are you going to put up around it? And that, what my assignment to any brand would be, is to really look at that and put those tools in place so you can set yourself up not only for survival in the short term, but for growth in the long term. And I think, that's a big key.
No, I think that's good. And anybody that knows me, anybody listening that knows me, I'm very transparent. I will give you all the information you need to be successful. And in the end, I hope you choose myself. One of the things that I've always liked about our relationship, Mike, is you and I are a lot like that. We will data dump with anybody. We'll spend the time and talk. We want to give them all the information so they can be successful. And in the end, most of the clients will come to us for that help, because we were transparent. We guided them down a path. And I'm encouraging, if anybody has these questions during these times, or looking for just a little guidance, reach out to Michael, reach out to myself. Either one of us or all three of us, we can jump on a call, just walk you through it and see if there's something we can help you with there, or define it out. And then if an over or larger strategy or a good plan, I know Michael would love to help you with that.
Yeah. And I'll say, I think you're exactly right. I think one of our, biggest assets is we work with so many brands who deal with, like, it's very rare for me to get a call and be asked about an issue that I've never heard of before or seen before, and it's not because I'm a genius or, I just see the future. It's because I touch so many brands on a daily that they're having these issues to some varying degree. So, I might not have the exact answer, but I can say, hey, listen, I worked with 3 brands. This is what they did. This is how it worked for one. This is how, I don't know how it's going to work for you, but I'm laying out some options and you can decide what to do. And I think that's where a lot of the value comes, just from the experience of being in the weeds, right? Being on that battlefield day in and day out across all different verticals, across all different internet platforms.
I couldn't agree more. I always say that, I may not be the smartest person in the room by any means, but I'm wiser than most. Why? Because wisdom only comes with the time that you're doing something, right? And that's so true. Maurice and I talk about this all the time. We get hit with the most random questions, and I fire right back, just like you do. And Maurice is like, how did you know that? Oh, I was working with XYZ company, had the same thing, and maybe it was a domain issue, but it's so relevant to now, or maybe it's an ad word, it's the same thing. And, there's just not a lot that can trump us. And again, it's not speaking to that, but also one of the great things about having like a relationship that you and I have, if I do get something that trumps me, I reach out to you. Same with you, come back to me, because that's what it is. You're only as good as the people you line around you, right? Nobody has the golden wand for this, but what we do have is I've got a very good network that I can bounce things off of. I know who to go to when we need help, or who to talk to, and things of that nature. So I think it's really critical. One thing I'll leave everybody with, if you are thinking about putting a whole new channel strategy in place, the best thing you could do is to reach out to a few people like Michael and myself, and just ask us some of those basic questions. We would love to help you with that, but at least ask some questions to guide you down the right path.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, at least ask some questions so you don't end up in an orange jumpsuit, because no one.
Well, Michael, thanks for the time. Much appreciated. I know you're a busy guy, especially with everything going on right now. And Dave, it's always fun to hear Dave talk. I know I have to hear him talk every day. One of those things. But again, if there are any questions, feel free to leave us a message. I'll leave our email links and such in the video below. And thank you for your time.
And also, Maurice, really quick, we'll sign off with this too. I would love to do this more and more. If anybody has questions, or if there's something that they would like, if Michael gives us his time again, he may flip me the bird later. We'll know, But if there's topics that people would like to know, or if they want to, we just kind of winged this, right? We wanted to just have a good conversation. Anybody that knows Michael and myself, we work really well bouncing back and forth on the conversation. But what do people want to learn? Is there something they want to dive in? Do they want to talk about MAP Basics 101, right? Or in what is an investigation? Or you're talking about this authorized reseller program. What is that? What does that look like? If I can get Mike's time, we'll do this again. And if that's what you want to hear, maybe we'll outline another 20-minute little session and talk about what a true strategy looks like, and see and guide you down that path. And then ultimately, get some money in Mike's pocket because he needs more ties and shirts.
Well, thank you guys so much. Stay safe, stay healthy, everyone.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.
Bye. See ya.